Today I wanted to talk to you about the Puppet Warp tool. This tool allows you to distort your image with a visual mesh that lets you see exactly what you're going to be pushing and pulling while leaving other parts of your image untouched. This can be used with things such as sculpting the body slightly or the hair, or major distortions like arm and leg placement, fingers, things like that. In order to get to this Puppet Warp tool, you're going to go to your Edit menu, scroll down till you find Puppet Warp. Once it's open, you'll see that the layer that you have selected is going to have a mesh put over it, you'll see here. And you'll be able to add pins into this object and manipulate them in your image. Now before we do that, let's cancel this out here. I found that I use this often, so I added a keyboard shortcut to this. In order to do that for yourself, go to your Edit menu and Keyboard Shortcuts. And from here, make sure Shortcuts 4, you have Application Menus. Click on the Edit and scroll down until you find the Puppet Warp. Click in the empty space there and type in the keyboard shortcut you want to use. I used Control Alt Shift and W. Once you have that entered, click Accept and OK. Now every time you press those keys, you'll be able to work with your Puppet Warp. So we're going to do that here with this image on the voodoo doll here. So I'm going to open up the Puppet Warp, and we see that we have now the mesh all over our voodoo doll, which I have on its own layer. If it were part of the entire layer, like if it were part of the background image, this mesh would cover from corner to corner. But since we're only using the voodoo doll, this is what it covers. And up at the top, you'll see there are a few different modes and other options to use with this. We'll get into all of them as we go along, but a brief overview of the modes. You have Rigid, Normal, which is selected by default, and Distort. Under Density, you have Fewer Points, Normal, and More Points. Those points are referring to how many of the triangles you'll see within your mesh here. The more points you use, the more intricate and delicate the manipulations will be, the more precise, but it takes a little bit more processor time. Under Expansion, this is for the mesh itself, how far it extends past or into your image. This goes from a range of -20 to a +100. Also with the checkbox here of Show Mesh, you can turn off that mesh or leave it on. And the pin depth we'll get to a little bit later on. Same as with the Rotate. Now you have the ability to remove all the pins that you place, to cancel Puppet Warp, and of course commit the Puppet Warp once you're done and you like what you have. Now for this voodoo doll here, what you want to do is add a couple of points, add a couple of pins which serve as anchor points to your object. The parts that you pin down are kept from moving unless you move them yourself. So for this, first I'm going to turn off the mesh at the moment so you can see clearly. I'm going to add a pin directly over the center of his chest. And this will not do much of anything. If I want to click and drag and move that around, I now am moving the entire voodoo doll. I'm going to add another pin into the head. Now if I want to drag and move that around, all I'm going to be doing is spinning this around with the chest pin being the pivot point. I can also move the pin in the head closer or further away from the chest. And you'll see as it adapts and distorts itself according to what you want to do with that pin. But the more pins you place, the more you keep your image secure. The more you keep it still and you're able to move only the parts that you want to have moved. So I'm going to add one into each of the hands, one into the lower abdomen, and on both of the feet here. So now as I move the head, the rest of the body for the most part stays very still, and I can manipulate this head in any direction I want, as far as I want. Pull it too far, the distortion gets a little bit too strong. And it may or may not be to your liking, but you can still do this. And if I wanted to add more points to the body, I can manipulate further. Let me take this arm up a little bit, but if I were to put that arm back and add one right over there, then I can move the arm while leaving almost the rest of the body completely untouched. And I can warp it by stretching out a little bit or by a lot. Now let's clear these pins for the moment. Now this is under normal mode with the density of normal. I'm going to turn the mesh back on so we can get a good look at this here, and I'm going to take the density to fewer points so you can see what that looks like. Now you're not going to notice with this image too much of a difference. I can add these points into the hands, the head, the chest, all the same areas. And with the fewer points, it just means that I can move and it doesn't have as much information to work with. It's not concerning itself with so many smaller tiny details in the distortion, which makes it a lot easier for the computer to process. If you've got a good amount of processor speed and RAM, you won't notice much of a difference. I'm going to turn up the density to more points, and now you see you've got a much more complex mesh here. Now, same thing, I can move it around, but now it is going to use, let me zoom in and show you, it's going to use a lot more information of each of these polygons here. As it's stretching and moving around, it's computing from where you pull the pin, how it's going to affect the triangles around it, and then how those are going to affect the triangles around them, so on and so forth. And at each anchor point, each pin, this will be held in place, and the computer's processing the difference between the two and how much it should distort. But the difference between fewer points, normal, and more points depends more on your processor speed. Put that back, and I'm going to go back to normal, turn off the mesh because it's a lot clearer to see. Now with the normal mode, I can move this hand up, move the head to the side, drag this hand out a little bit, and move the feet around. Now this is under the mode of normal. I'm going to switch it to rigid, and you see there's only a slight change. It just has a difference in its computing of how much distortion to give, and hence the name rigid. It's keeping the distortions a little bit more rigid than normal mode. Sometimes you won't see much of a difference. It's all about what you find that you want in your image. But let's go to distort, and we'll see some much bigger differences. With distort, these kind of distortions are very good for wide angle lens images you might be trying to use the puppet warp with, or if you're trying to go for some fun or funny special effects like this here. The further you drag one of your anchor points away from the center, away from other points and the center of your image, the larger its surrounding area gets. And I can pull this back to give him a very stumpy arm, even drag the head up and it grows larger. The further I pull it away from this center anchor, the larger the head grows. Like I said, it's all what you want to see in your image. And you can play around with this, and this particular effect, playing around with the distort, is something that I only really found out about as I was playing around with it not too long ago. And you can have a lot of fun with this, but we're going to go back to taking those pins out. Let's get back to normal. And let's move on to the next image here. I realized just before posting this to YouTube that there were a couple of things I left out. So I added this little bit of video to give you a little bit more information and tell you about some of the things that I forgot here. Now, when you're working with the Puppet Warp tool, one thing you need to know is you can only add your pins into an actual image or object on a layer. You cannot pin transparent areas. Anything around this voodoo doll would not be pinnable. Only the doll and any pixels that make up the doll itself. And you can use the Puppet Warp tool on both a layer mask and a vector mask. And let me show you a little bit about how that works. Let me add the layer mask to the voodoo doll. And grabbing my brush tool, I'm going to mask out just a couple of parts of the doll. Around the arms, basically severing the arms and the head and the legs like some creepy serial killer.
No! No! No!
And now I'm going to open up the Puppet Warp tool. And as soon as I place a pin anywhere on the doll areas, the mask itself goes mostly to white. There are a few black marks you can see. Let me zoom in here. And that is because the expansion is set to 2 pixels. That little bit of extra expansion is leaving some black marks on the mask. So I'm just going to switch this down to 0. And now, if I wanted to play with my doll, I just click and I can drag now these entirely separate pieces anywhere over my scene without warping the other pieces. Each piece is now individual, and I can now warp just the legs without affecting anything on the rest of the body. I can mess around with the head, the hand, anything else like that. Let me cancel that out here. Now, in order to play with your image like that, you need to have both your layer and the layer mask linked together. As I unselect the link between these two, I'm going to make sure that the doll is selected, not the layer mask. Get the Puppet Warp tool open, put a pin in the head and the chest. Now, as I move the head around, it is separated from the body, but still being affected by the layer mask. Cancel that, and now I'm going to select the layer mask rather than the doll itself, and do the same thing with the Puppet Warp tool. Adding to the head and the chest. Now, as I pull these around, it is working the layer mask itself. I'm able to warp those areas that I painted out. And it could be a lot of fun to work with, but I just wanted to show you the options that you do have and the other things that you can work with the Puppet Warp tool. Now that I've finished this little added video, back to the regularly scheduled program. Now, same thing with this image that I've selected the hand and pulled it onto a layer of its own. Let's get the Puppet Warp tool open, and I'm going to temporarily turn off the mesh. Now, same thing with not just voodoo dolls, but you can play around with the image of someone's hand here. Let's add some anchor points to keep it still. You're going to want to, depending on your image, add anchor points on, joint areas, things that would normally be the point where an image would curve if you're dealing with things like hands and such. So I'm going to add at the base of each of the fingers and then on the tips of each. And I could take these fingers and sort of drag one over a bit as I drag this one a little bit closer. Now you'll see that there is a curve to the finger there. It's bending itself and rotating around the pinpoint at the base of the finger. Now if you want to straighten that out a little bit, you can add another point somewhere in the middle of the finger and adjust it, drag that around until you get it straight, or as straight as you need it. But we're going to, for the moment, delete this. I'm going to delete this pin here. Pressing the delete key will delete your selected pin. And while we're on the subject, if you want to delete any of the other pins you've added to your image, you have two choices. Up at the top, you click on this and it removes all of your pins. Or you can hold down your Alt key, Option on a Mac, hover it over the pinpoint till you see the little scissor symbol, and click to delete it. Let's get these pins back in place and drag this finger over and this little finger over here. Now this brings up another point I want to make. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Two things. The expansion is basically how much space the mesh takes up outside of the image you're playing with, the selected layer, or how much the mesh pulls inwards. Now we're going to lower this to show you the effect. You'll see that the expansion is 2 pixels, so 2 pixels outside of each of the fingers is as far as the mesh goes. You can see that if you zoom in nice and close. Yeah, you see here that the mesh is just slightly outside of the finger itself. And in that little space of the expansion, it's basically a sort of moving, it's a mask on top of itself. It's going to show through the finger underneath here to the layer below. Now if I want to take that expansion, to click and drag that to the left, I'm dragging the mesh inwards slowly. Go back up to the 2 pixels and turn on the mesh to show you what I'm talking about here. Now as I'm dragging that in closer, you can see it shrinking down to -20 pixels from the actual outline of the fingers. And it basically masks out everything that is on the outside of the mesh. Put it back up to 2, and I will expand the mesh upwards. Like I said, it goes up to +100, but I make that mesh larger and larger. And you'll see between the finger and the edge of the mesh, the outline, the sort of living mask that it is, and it's basically allowing you to see through this finger here to the layer below. And I can bring that all the way up to 100. And by the growing of that mesh, it is warping everything around it. Let's lower that back down to my 2 pixels. In fact, I'm going to bring it down to 0 pixels. I want the mesh to be exactly on the outline of the fingers. To bring up my next point here. Now this part of the finger, the pinky, is now over this finger. If I were to have this anchor point selected, I go to pin depth, basically seeing it also like a bunch of layers, anything one on top of the other into a little stack, a hierarchy of the pins. So if I want to bring this finger underneath the one here, I'm going to have it selected and select over here the pin, to bring the pin downwards in its hierarchy. Click it once and it is now underneath this finger. Once again, bring that up and I'll select this one here, and depending on how close this section of the finger is and this pin is to the other one, it may bring this finger over or maybe just some of it. But let's try here. I bring that up one and it brings this selection of the finger above the pinky. And with this you can play with an image that has multiple parts coming out of it you're playing with, and you don't have to rely on masking something out that may be too difficult once you're done. You can play with your fingers and have one cross over the other, things of that nature. So I'm going to not apply that and move to full view here. And the same thing stands with the hand here. If we wanted to play with the different modes and densities. We're going to go with the density of more points to have it a little bit more precise. I'm going to take that expansion down to 0. We're going to turn the mesh off, and we're going to go to distort, because, like I said, this is a fun tool to play with if you wanted to use this tool for a sort of foreshortening effect. I don't have the right image in front of me at the moment, but if you had a part of a person that was throwing a punch and you wanted to pull that fist out and have it grow as it moved further from the body in order to have a sort of foreshortening effect, it would be pretty fun to use. Or if you wanted to shrink the fingers down as you drag them towards the middle. There are some practical effects you could use this with. So let's move on to the next one here. Like, say we wanted to do a little bit of facial reconstruction and some hair modeling. Minor tweaks and adjustments could play with this image to achieve different effects. Let's make a copy of this layer, because the puppet warp will not work on a locked layer on your background unless you unlock it, but I'm going to create a copy of it here. And then set myself up for the puppet warp. Now I have the mesh off. I'm going to leave it at normal, both for mode and density. And it's not a cutout image. It's not masked out. I'm now concerning myself with the entire image here. Okay, turn on the mesh. You see what I'm talking about. And I'm going to add a few points around the image to anchor them into place, like at the nape of the neck, earlobe. You can also add pins, say, outside of the range of the object you want to work with. You go just off the tip of the nose, just outside the hairline, and a couple of points. I could either go outside the hair or inside. I'll put one in there, same as here, and put one there. Now remember, if I don't want this part of the body affected, I'm going to want to anchor it down. So if I were to pull this around, it's not going to play with this too much. So I'm going to add one on the chin, on the base of the neck, and at the corner of the image here. Now if you feel you wanted to hide your pins for whatever reason, press the H key and hold the H key down to make them temporarily invisible in case you needed to see your image clearly. Release the H to see your pins again. And click to select a pin and push it in or in any direction as you want to sculpt your hair. And always know that you can add more pins if you need a little bit more precision work to be done. A few of these in just a little bit. If you find that you're pulling too much, leave it alone, add a pin to keep that in place, and then continue to move as you need to. Now I want to bring out the front of the face by the nose a little bit, while bringing the head inward from the hairline, and then drag the chin down a little. Notice that it didn't pull too much or at all around the neck area. And then I could reconstruct, put the ear back where I need it if I wanted to. Add a pin at the top of the ear and drag that upwards. And once you find what you like, just click the check mark above to have the computer process the image, and now you've got your new layer adjusted with your puppet warp here, seeing the differences between the two. Now in this image here, man against the white background, let's say I didn't like the way that the umbrella was lying with the body. It's not following the line of his arm and more along the line of his leg. which is not what I want for this image. So let me show you what I'm speaking about here. The arm and the umbrella, by the red lines here, they're way off. And I wanted to move it to follow along this blue line, which is going along the same line that his arm is. Now if I wanted to make that sort of change, I could do that with Puppet Warp here. Let me first turn that layer off for now. And I'm going to create a copy of this layer. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Actually, let's turn that layer back on, but we're going to take the opacity down to, say, about R1. We're going to take the layer with the lines. We're going to take that layer's opacity down to about 33. Now I want to get this umbrella to move over a little bit and follow the blue line. Okay, with this layer selected, I'm going to get the Puppet Warp tool open. I'm going to add a point onto his hand, or just a little bit off the hand, around this area here. And then somewhere around this part of the umbrella, and then another one down at the tip. Now, one of the things that I haven't shown you yet that you can do here with Puppet Warp is you can select and move more than one anchor point at a time. With one selected, holding down the Shift key while clicking the other pins will get you to multi-select them, and then you're able to drag as many as you've selected at one time. So I'm going to take these 2 points as they're both selected. I'm going to move them over. Not worrying about the rest of the body here, we'll fix that later. But we'll move that a little bit at a time to about there. Now we need to add another point here. I'm going to pull you over just a little bit to the blue. And then the bottom point, we'll select that by itself and drag you around until you are much more in line with what we're looking for. And straighten these out as necessary. Now selecting this pinpoint around the hand. One last thing to show you is if you hold down the Alt key with a pin selected, just one pin. You cannot do this with multiple pins, but with one pin selected, hold down the Alt key, Option for a Mac, and bring the mouse close to the pin but not on top of it. You then have this wheel. You can rotate the angle slightly or as much as you want around that wheel. It can get pretty warped. But let's say you just want to pull it in a little bit. You can then rotate for minor adjustments here or there. And we'll say about there is fine. Once I have that done, then you just click the check mark or press enter. Now you've got your umbrella in line with the new direction you want to be in. So we're going to turn off that layer here, and we're holding down the Alt or Option key. Select the mask tool to add a black mask, erasing the entire layer, basically turning it invisible. We're going to paint in white over the umbrella area to bring it back in the one that we wanted. And we'll just paint and fix this up as we go here. Bring this umbrella, revealing the layer, the new layer above, until we get it to fit. Now, zoom in closer to the hand, because as you have two layers sort of meshed over one another, you're going to want to make sure that you've got the right combination of layers here. Clean that up around the edges. And work it till you get the hand back as fully visible as you need it. You've got your new umbrella, and you could continue to do some more cleaning around to make it perfect. Clean around the legs. Just increase that size and get rid of the rest of this old umbrella. And there you have it. You've now got the umbrella moved in the direction that you wanted it to be moved, fitting more along the blue line, and still while keeping your man entirely in place. The hand looks good, the handle of the umbrella looks good, and you've got your picture adjusted. So moving on to the last example here. Now in this one, let's say on this image you wanted to play with the tree. It looks good where it is, but you wanted to sort of give it a little bit of adjustment towards, make it any particular way that you like. Now, I don't have an image with the tree erased, so in order to clear out the area behind the tree that you're going to play with, we're going to make a selection around this tree, just around the base area, nice and loose. And then we are going to go to Edit, Fill, and for Contents, we're going to choose Content Aware. And that looks pretty good. For purposes of this tutorial, it looks good enough for me. So once that's cleared out, I have the tree already selected. I had it cut out and put on its own layer to play with it for this example here. But once we have that, we can now get to the Purple Warp tool and do the same thing as we've done before now. Add anchors where you want to keep things in place or to be able to move them later. And say you want to bow the whole tree down. You don't have to click on individual branches. I just want to take a general click right around the center of the area. And with these held in place, now all I need to do is drag my tree around wherever I need it to be. Now I notice there's obviously some cutoff here because this was the edge of the image. If you want to create more branches, that's an entire process on its own. But for this example here, I'm going to show you that you can now move this tree, like say off to that side here. I pull on the trunk of the tree any way that's necessary. And using the same technique I showed you before, selecting a part of the tree, selecting one of the pins on the tree, holding your Alt or Option key, you can then rotate that section to fit any kind of twist that you feel you want to have it fit for you. And once you have your tree basically in the position that you want it in, you just click the check mark above. And you've got yourself a slightly altered tree. But this can be used if you wanted to take the time on this and the incredible amount of detail. You could work a lot more with some of the individual branches on the outside, a little bit on the inside. But remember, as you warp one branch on the inside of the tree here, it's going to be affecting everything else around it unless you had them cut and on separate layers. But that is basically some of the uses and techniques, some of the specifics about the Puppet Warp tool. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And please feel free to subscribe if you want to see more videos. And I hope you enjoyed and learned something. I look forward to coming to you next time with another video soon.